You are live now.
Okay. Thank you. Good day, everybody. It is May, what is it, the 18th? 19th. The 18th, right? Hope everybody had a good long weekend. We had a nice, some nice weather. We also had another tragedy that hit Nova Scotia. So before I go to check in with all the councillors, I know that some of the councillors knew Captain Jen Casey, and I'm going to ask Richard Zarowski if he'd say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And one of the great joys of Nova Scotia is that we're all so close to each other. We're small. And one of the great tragedies is that we're all so close and we're small and know each other. And such was the case with Jennifer Casey. I had the absolute pleasure of working with her for a couple of years at 95.7, and she was the best of the best. She was bright, intelligent, caring, an infectious smile, attitude that made working with her just an absolute pleasure. She produced the science files for me on occasion. She produced Rick Howe's Talking Show, Geordie Morgan's show, so many others, and she did so with incredible professionalism. And it was with great sadness and with joy that we watched her leave in 2016 for the Armed Forces, where she was a captain. And she rapidly moved through the ranks and was with the Snowbirds when the tragedy occurred this weekend. And my heart is broken, and I don't have the words that I really want to express to her family, to her colleagues. And as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, so many of us knew her in her capacity as a reporter, a producer, and as a personality with the various media she worked with, particularly News 95.7. So I would ask everyone to just take 30 seconds to think about their interactions with her and how small and delicate our community is, and the sadness which we all have now at her passing. Okay,
we'll just, before we take a moment of silence, I know a lot of other councillors, Councillor Outhead, I know, had posted about his interactions with her, and many of us would have talked to her. But thank you for that, Councillor Zarowski. Let's take a moment of silence in honor of Jen Casey, and keep in mind Captain Richard McDougall, who's from nearby New Brunswick, who survived the crash and was injured. So let's take a moment of silence, think of Jen Casey and her family and friends. Thank you, colleagues. Okay. This is the third moment of silence that we've had since on these virtual meetings. Colleagues, let's hope for no more.
Just clarify the date, Mr. Mayor. It is the 19th of May, not the 18th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, I may be in the wrong place then. Oh, I'm here.
there are extended holidays.
Let's make sure that we see everybody's smiling faces and that they're working. Councillor Stretch from the Muscadavid Valley.
Yes, good afternoon, Your Worship, colleagues. I'm here and pleased to be representing District 1, Waverley, Fall River, Muscadavid Valley.
Thank you. Councillor Hensby.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here in my beautiful office in Muscatauget Harbor at the Railway Museum. A beautiful day out here. People out enjoying the trails, social distancing, of course, but hope everyone had a very pleasant Victoria Day weekend.
Thank you. Councillor Karsten, are you with us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am here with you today. Nice to see everybody's smiling faces. Again, I can't express enough my own personal condolences. It's just tragic times for sure. And it's like Richard said, how many people are affected in that it's hard to know who is connected. But our own Carol Saab, Mr. Mayor, at FCM, knew Jen very well. They went to Carleton at some point or another. So our condolences. Thanks, Richard, for those words.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nichol.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Nice to be here. Beautiful day from Cole Harbor, Westfall. I just echo a lot of the sentiments that were said. It is a sad day, but hopefully we will not be having to have moments of silence for another woman who served our country well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm here. Things are, sorry, I have some kids in the background today, but I think that'll settle out momentarily.
Hey, kids are good things to have. Never apologize for kids. Did Councillor Mancini get in yet? Let's make sure Corey knows that Councillor Mancini's struggling a bit to get in.
Probably still on a walk with spirit.
Yeah. Councillor Mason.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Happy to be here. It's a sunny, beautiful day in District 7. Lots for us to think about today. Thank you for those words, Councillor Zarowski.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here and present and looking forward to the meeting.
Councillor Cleary, are you aboard?
I am indeed, Your Worship, and I also want to thank Richard for those kind words. It's you know, weeks and months now of mixed emotions, but the sun is shining out my window. District 9 is a pleasant place to be today, and just remind everyone to support your local businesses, shop local, and you know, just enjoy those little things in life that we can, because they can be easily taken away from us.
Councillor Walker, did you make it? He's still working, okay. He's getting one-on-one tutorial help as we speak. Councillor Adams, you with us?
I am, Your Worship, thank you, and from beautiful downtown Halifax. Thank you.
Councillor Zarowski, we know. Hello again. You may be on mute, Councillor.
Not a bad thing, Mr. Mayor. I'm here in my grotto in lovely Wedgwood, looking at the window at the trees and leaves that are budding, and hopefully we can put our grief and tragedies behind us in the coming days. And I look forward to representing the good constituents of District.
Councillor Whitman.
Thank you, Mayor Savage. Glad to be here. Nice to have Victoria weekend with my kids and give them a hug. Thanks for bubbling, Dr. Strang.
Indeed. Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Hi there. Thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Zarowski as well. I too had the absolute privilege of working with Jen for 4 years, and she was absolute positive energy on 2 feet.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Good afternoon, and I'm also looking forward to better times ahead. We are heading into the summer, and I'm hoping the people will get out and be able to enjoy the weather, the sun, and the temperatures, and just everything that's around, and hopefully things will relax a little bit by Canada Day and through the rest of the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Outset.
Hello, Mayor. Hello to everybody, and thank you, Richard, for your very well done words for Jen. She was lovely, and she'll be missed by many. And as you said, Mayor, hopefully this will be the end of these announcements and moments of silence for a while. It's been rough, but we will go forward. But what her family's going through, I can't imagine. Thank you.
Indeed. Councillor Mancini.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. I had a few difficulties getting in, but I am now in. Thanks very much. Good to see everyone.
All right. And Councillor Walker, we're still working on, or has he joined? I think we're working on Councillor Walker. Jacques Dubé, you're with us, our CAO?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm here.
How about the birthday boy, John Traves? You with us, John?
I am, Mayor. Present.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I hope you get 1/10 the abuse I got last week.
Yeah, I've used myself by going on a long bike ride. So, well, that didn't come out right. But anyway, we'll move on from there.
Awesome. Okay. And I know we have a number of other folks. How about a thumbs up for the folks who are producing this show and have for the last few weeks? So Laura and Liam, give some thumbs up to these folks. Give them some love. They're doing a great job. Thank you to our producers. I just want to go over the schedule. So today's agenda is we're picking up where we left off on Friday. We're going to do corporate and customer services, planning and development, finance, legal, CAO, and auditor general, or as far as we get. I think all of those folks will be ready to go. We have staff here to deal with those. Tomorrow morning we go in camera, and I think in the afternoon we're looking at library, fire, and police. That's the schedule, Cheryl or Laura or John? Let's just correct that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We have a number of meetings this week, so there's no minutes to approve. Good to see everybody. We'll begin then with, unless anybody has a question on procedure or clarification, we're going to move to Jerry Blackwood, I believe. Are you with us, Jerry?
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Mayor. Is
How you doing,
everybody
Jerry?
hear me okay?
We're good. How are you?
Not too bad, sir. Not too
Awesome.
bad.
Okay, so Jerry's going to talk about corporate and customer services. It's your floor, Jerry. Take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Regional Council. Jerry Blackwood, Director of Corporate and Customer Services. I'll take you through a brief overview of our budget that was presented last week by the CAO in reference to the deck. I think it's slide 40 that outlines our budget changes. With me this afternoon for some support, I have Diane Chisholm, John McPherson, Breton Murphy, and Kim Jollymore to support any questions that you may have. Just before I get started, I just want to say a sincere thank you to the great staff of Corporate and Customer Services over the last 10 weeks. Their commitment and diligence around work needed to be done and their leadership has been absolutely fantastic. Special shout out to the cleaning staff, our municipal cleaning staff. They have certainly been the rock stars of, I think, our business unit over the last 10 weeks, and we are so grateful for all that they do every day. Just want to say a quick thank you to my management team who have helped prepare this budget recast, as well as to the essential staff that are coming into work every day on the front lines in municipal facilities, 311, corporate communications, and corporate fleet. And certainly be remiss over the last 10 weeks if we had to adjust our service levels to our corporate clients. So just want to appreciate my colleagues out there for their patience as we made adjustments going through this. So in terms of our budget recast, we had 5 focus areas was sort of our strategy in terms of how we are going to reduce costs and save budget. So the 5 areas we focused on were certainly we needed to look at our essential services and corporate clients and what their need was over this COVID period. Focus on cost savings and discretionary spending. We also, third part of our strategy was focus on vacancies and vacancy management. The 4th point we focused on was capital spending in terms of savings and deferrals. And the 5th was possible service reductions that we could propose to council. So as I said, it's been a challenging 10 weeks, and obviously we've had to reduce service levels with respect to building closures and in other areas where we have to support essential services, certainly have had to increase our service levels. So as I mentioned before, cleaning, it has been a top priority, very important during this period of COVID from a health and safety point of view. So we've had to procure additional vendors that can disinfect if we had a positive COVID test where there was exposure in our workplace or in our corporate fleet vehicles. And then for facilities that remained open, we've certainly had to look at our service level and quality around cleaning. So just one area I'll point out was in our transit depots, in our park and rides, in our ferry terminals, our ferries. Certainly had to increase our service level there. Very important to ensure to the staff and the public that proper procedures have been taken place there. So we had to look at that. Another area we had to look at too was how we support the organization and the EOC from a communications perspective. And we've had to set up contracts for media briefings in that area as well. Certainly unprecedented times, and they can certainly come with budget pressures. So just one thing that I do want to point out as you know, CCS looks to support our internal clients and the public is with respect to one of our assumptions was that parks would remain closed throughout the summer, and there was a savings of $200,000 in our budget for the cleaning of the outdoor washrooms. Now that parks are open, that is a pressure that we will need to clean those outdoor public washrooms. Point number 2 of our strategy, focus on cost savings and discretionary spending. One of the easy reductions that we were able to make without a whole lot of pencil sharpening was fuel. Just based on global markets, that one was pretty easy. So we have $1.1 million savings in fuel. As I mentioned before, with rec centers closed, libraries closed, there's some obvious costs there with respect to utilities costs. And we took $1.7 million out of our budget there, and also a reduction in maintenance and our supplies budget of $400,000. So the big assumptions around this budget, these budget reductions, were that, you know, spring and summer programming would not be happening. So the rec facilities are closed. We are operating under the assumption all the pools will be closed, including outdoor pools. So again, pools take a significant amount of utilities costs, so we're saving monies there, but planning to reopen the pools for fall programming. We're also only doing critical repairs and fire stations, so that has given us an opportunity for savings as well. We also looked at reduction in general expenses. So like everybody, we've made cuts across the board on training and education, conferences, out of town travel, local travel, and office supplies and equipment. That's to the tune of $270,000. And we looked at our professional fees budget that we had for some consulting across the board. So that was a reduction of $60,000. One budget line that we had that was discretionary that we looked at was our special projects. These were mostly related to corporate communications and fleet. Those pretty much remain the same. As I mentioned before, we had to establish support for our media briefings, and we needed to, we had to put a placeholder in our budget for some other occupational health and safety things that we may be coming up in corporate fleet. But I will say that in that budget is $50,000 to support the Heads Up Halifax budget and road safety program. So as we project things to open up, we will put some money towards programming of that campaign in the fall. Our third point, vacancies and vacancy management. So we increased our vacancy management rate to 5% from 2%. With a hiring freeze, we have 17 vacancies in total in corporate and customer services, and 5 new positions that were put forward in our original budget are on hold as well. On the capital side, what we've proposed there is we've proposed $20 million in capital spending deferrals and savings. That is in the total building portfolio, so that mostly focuses, as Dave Reggie talked on Friday, around some of the expansion in our transit centers, as well as the Macintosh Depot and fire station replacements are pushed out. But money in the budget for we consider these in-flight projects money. They're more around the design and engineering. And the fifth thing we looked at was the focus on possible service reductions. So we're looking at reduction of 311 hours for after-hour service, and we've proposed the closure of the Duke Street and Sackville customer service centers. So in all, the proposed cost and service reductions result in savings of $6.2 million, or 15% of our total budget. So thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Colleagues, one thing I meant to mention off the top is we're scheduled to go to 5. The CAO and I have to jump on a call at 4:30, so I'm hoping everybody's okay if we adjourn today at 4:25 and pick it up again tomorrow. Is everybody okay with that? Just give me a thumbs up if you're okay, or a thumbs down if you've got an issue. Okay, so we'll go to 3. We'll take a break at 3, and then we'll come back and we'll go to 4:25. Jerry, just before I go to some questions, you mentioned the cleaners, and we have to give a real shout out. You're 100% correct. So often in the last couple of months, our cleaners have to jump into action at all hours. and in many different venues. They've done it with cooperation. They've been nimble, efficient, and really quite extraordinary. It's been one of the real challenges of COVID. And so I think to our cleaning staff, I echo your compliments to them and thank them for their really exemplary service in difficult times. So I hope you'll pass that along for us, Jerry.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jerry, for the presentation. I just have one set of questions related. All on the capital side, the corporate accommodations. The budget on that, it had been 2.6 million prior to COVID, but it's grown in the revised budget to 3.6 million. And I'm just wondering what's going on in corporate accommodations when so much of like that particular budget line, when so much has been cut that one's been grown. I assume there must be some project or something in flight there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. With respect to that budget, I think a lot of that is related to the accommodations project with our staff at the Scotia Square building, Duke Street, and that is a corporate real estate capital project. So I don't know if Jane would want to chime in on that one and provide some additional context.
I can wait and bring it up, you know, at a different point if it's better to talk about it under capital.
Yeah, I agree. But if Jane, I don't know if Jane wanted to comment on that or not, but it can certainly be part of the capital discussion.
Jane, did you want to speak to that now, or do you want to wait till later? Jane, are you with us? Maybe we'll wait till later then. Go ahead. We'll wait. We'll maybe get that again, Sam.
Yeah, I'm happy to circle them. I'll just as a heads up to staff, that one, and then the corporate accommodations alternate below it for 266,000. I'm just questioning like if there's room to defer these potential projects, because I know we're all in the mode of working from home, office spaces are in flux, unless there's something mission critical involving leases that we're needing this space to be open to free up space here, then it's really, I don't think that's where we should be plunking money right now. So I wanted a little bit more info on both of those items. But it can wait till later.
Did I hear Jane come in?
So, I'm still having trouble with headsets and mics. Can you hear me now?
We can, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. My apologies. So thank you very much, Councillor Austin. The reason for the change in corporate accommodations is we've actually moved the money forward. And the reason is the, as Jerry mentioned, it's the Duke Street location, third floor. So what we're doing is moving some of the corporate accommodations. We've gone out to the street to tender for new space, and the plan is to move planning and development over to third floor Duke Tower to incorporate all of the staff in one area. What this will do is free up other areas and will actually result in operating savings as we go forward. So that's the reason for moving the funding forward.
So are we giving up lease space as the end of all of this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the councillor. Yes, there will be some lease space that is vacated. It will also free up space on the second floor of Alderney Gate, and the intention there is to use that as swing space as we're moving other moves, so that we do not have to go out and lease other space when we're moving people around. It becomes very difficult to find other locations, and it results in increased costs quite often.
Okay. Did we look at how time sensitive is the is this project? You say you've got a tender out. Is that entire 3.6 million?
Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. So it is quite time sensitive. The The lease up for Duke Street expires in February 21. So we do have some money in my budget that is there to extend the lease. We have gone out with looking for space for legal, for ICT, for some for transit, as well as GRIA. So there's a number of tenders that are out that will result in moving people around.
Okay, is that entire line, that 3.6 million, or is there other stuff that's bundled into that?
It's predominantly that. There is some work being done on the 6th floor of Alderney Gate currently on the director's suite, as well as procurement to refresh that, and the old human resources space as well. That was on 6th floor of Alderney. So as you can appreciate, once there's one move, there's all sorts of dominoes that play into that.
Okay, so there's 266 listed for Alderney right below that. Would that be the directors and the 6th floor?
That would be if it's the Alderney Gate recap. There's
it's corporate accommodations Alderney 266 is all it says on the capital sheet.
14.
CB 000046. If that's at all helpful, it doesn't mean anything to me.
I have it actually. Thank you very much. So some of that is the Alderney 5th floor renovation. So the design for that, 6th floor renovations, payroll director suite. There's some work that was scheduled there for Miller Avenue to do some work there. And then other relocations and lease space for that.
Okay. Well, I hear what you're saying. Perhaps, I mean, it doesn't have to be decided today. I'd like to have a little bit more of a conversation about this, looking at the specifics of this one. Is fit up of office space, especially if it's internal space and it's not mission critical in terms of a move like the Alderney line is. I get what you're saying about the Scotia Square space and the many moving parts, but if there's anything in this area that we can defer, it seems to me that in this time that would be a prudent decision given the pressure on the budget.
I can certainly get more information, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, Jerry, thanks for your presentation, as always, and thank you to you and your team throughout COVID-19. Those folks are always stellar in their approach to their day-to-day work. I have questions about 311, Jerry. Can you share with me, are calls during COVID-19, are they up or down, or are they leveled off? Do you know that? And I'm also trying to understand you're looking to reduce, it's the after hours piece that you're looking to reduce. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. Yes, what we're looking at there is after hours service primarily. It may entail reduction in terms of our regular hours, maybe looking at reducing by an hour each day or a little bit on the weekend, but primarily our after hours reduction. Outside of a weather event, call volumes on average, I think they may be around a dozen calls per night. So we're confident that we can do some type of a workaround there. Right now, that after-hour service is being provided through a security contract, but we have some other ideas, including maybe there might be an opportunity to look at an outsource after hours where we can get a rate on a per call basis, and we could still probably save around $100,000 a year. However, right now we would need to work out obviously some ICT security issues with respect to doing an initiative like that, but it is around after hours. But I can assure you we will have after hour service for any type of an emergency event and a snow event. As for volumes through COVID-19, they've decreased a little bit. but not a lot. We might be looking at 100 or 200 calls a day, but on average we're getting anywhere between 1,000 to 1,200 calls.
Thank you for that, Jerry. And you talked about the seven. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and our service level is we're around, I think, between 97, 98%, and our abandonment rate has we're usually around 5-6%. It's down around 2%, so that's a good thing. But like I said, with a little bit of a decrease in call volumes, that's likely to happen.
Yeah, thank you. And you talked about the 17 vacancies, and I know we can't get into the positions here unless we're in camera, but how many of those positions are been vacant for a while versus have some become recently vacant? My reason for asking that is trying to understand what's the impact of not filling some of those positions, and how are you covering for? I suspect there is some impact on a few of those positions, and how do you back that up?
Yeah, I mean, with some of those positions, with some reduced capacity in other business units, we've been able to adjust there. Overall, I don't think our impact in terms of how we're supporting the essential services in the organization. Certainly corporate communications are down a few positions, and I mean they're quite busy through this whole COVID pandemic, and but like our 311 has some vacancies, but we're able to adjust, and what was the other? We had a couple other ones here and there, but like corporate fleet has a couple positions. One is a service advisor position over there, which is making it things a little bit difficult, because sometimes we do have to move a mechanic off the shop floor to fill that position, just because of the knowledge with the fleet focus and for us to comply with the collective agreement. That I would say is probably the most challenging area we have is a position in corporate fleet. But we're getting by. Everybody, I will say, is stepping up and doing everything they can in those areas where capacity is needed.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Austin, for asking about the corporate accommodations and the accommodations at Alderney. I was surprised to see a document that talks about budget reductions where there's an extra $750,000 that we're spending there. So I guess my first question is for Ms. Fraser. I believe it's Ms. Fraser anyway. There was a mention that some operating funds would be cleared up if these capital expenses are increased, and or Mr. Blackwood, I'm just wondering if you could estimate how much of the operating funds would be cleared up.
I can take that, Jerry, if you like.
Yeah, sure, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. So the operating costs will come from the reduction in the current lease space. So we have lease space at Bears Road and at Meller that would be consolidated with planning and development. And then there's also any swing space that we would have. So I will get a briefing note for council that lays out the business case, if you will, for advancing the construction of corporate accommodations. The operating savings obviously won't be felt or experienced until such time as all the moves have occurred. And then there's also projected savings that occur from not having to go out and lease space for swing space when we're doing accommodations.
Okay, thank you. For Mr. Blackwood, you had mentioned that the 311 hours would be reduced. I assume this is hours open. I wasn't able to form a clear picture, I don't think, of the response a few minutes ago. Do you know what the new open hours would be so that we could broadcast that? And would there be any time through the 24-hour period when 311 would just plain not be available?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Russell. No, we haven't worked out the specific details on this until such time as, you know, council would have to make a decision on that. What would we, you know, we would have to make adjustments in our schedule for, obviously, for weather events. We need to support winter works through the snow, and of course any type of emergency event which would warrant an after-hour service. But primarily the calls that we get after hours right now are mostly related to you know, some calls around animal services or parking enforcement, and they would be, you know, on average maybe 12 per night. So that would be in the hours from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but again, do you anticipate that 311 will just plain be offline at any time? There will be no after hours support through some periods, or?
Yeah, we would look at until we could stand up an alternative service where we could, say, look at an outsourcing option that we could get a cost on a per call volume, that we would have after hour service where 311 would not be available.
Okay.
That would be through periods of 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Right. So I've only been involved in one of those calls, and this was through a damaged bridge near here where multiple cars had gone into a pothole. It was a big enough pothole that it had caused damage to, again, multiple vehicles. So I just parked there babysitting that pothole until we were able to get some service trucks out there and at least put pylons in, and it was repaired over the next couple of days. I think if we lose 311 service after hours, we are putting ourselves at a little bit of a risk. What we would be dealing with would not be police issues, but they would be certainly infrastructure critical issues. And do you know when you would be able to come out with a new schedule of what the open hours would be?
Yeah, we would look at this once adopt a new service model once council makes a decision on this. But as I said before, we would have the staff up around that for any weather events or any critical emergency events. I can assure you that we would be doing that. But right at this time, the details on the after hours service model, we don't have that worked out at this point in time.
But as far as the open hours, what I'm looking to say is, Mr. Resident, Mrs. Resident, these are the hours that you will be able to call 311.
Yeah. We would have a regular service like 8 to 8. That service would pretty much be remaining intact.
So if we publish 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., that would still be open at that time, or do you anticipate changes in that?
As I said before, as part of this, we may look at a reduction on maybe on how late we stay open. Maybe we look at instead of 8 to 8, maybe it's an 8 to 6. But I can assure you that coverage over prime time would be there.
Okay, I'm gonna try one last time before I move on to the service centers. Do you know when that schedule would be available? Would it be available June 1st?
We could have that schedule. We would make that new service schedule once if council makes a decision on what we propose as a reduction in service hours. But as I said before, our prime time service hours will not be changing drastically. Probably not at all, but we may look at maybe shaving off an hour on the back end. But for the most part, the prime time service hours would remain intact.
Okay, Thank you.
Councillor Russell, if you have any more, you'll have to come back.
I would like to come back, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my question to Jerry is that when we start to open up and the still have to maintain social distances in this budget, is there a number to make the offices reworked? So we cannot do that because not everybody's going to work from home. Is there a number in this budget to start that?
Well, I guess to answer that question, Councillor, not specifically in my budget, but I think as things start to open up, you know, and with respect to your question around offices, you know, we would use our internal resources to, I guess, get procedures in place to manage proper social distancing within our offices. Certainly our corporate communications would work fairly extensively on that file because it would be a big communications initiative. But I think that's something, you know, we would all work together to do that within our current capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jerry Blackwood. Most of my questions are around corporate communications and staffing. Could you comment on the communications staffing level through the pandemic? Has it changed? Are the folks working from home and have their roles evolved? Secondly, there was talk of renovations to the 4th floor of City Hall, which is where the councilors go when they're downtown. Have the renovations, are they still proceeding? If not, what's the savings? And is there still talk of a full-time communications person for the councilors on the 4th floor, which I'm opposed to? On 311, did you say that it was going to move to contract positions in the evening? Wondering if that is more expensive than in-house, or if they'll be staffed by employees. And finally, also on City Hall, I notice when I'm in there nowadays, there seems to be a lot of open space, or at least offices that used to be housed by individuals that are no longer there. I think of the corporate executive officer who's no longer with us. Is City Hall fully being utilized, and are the renovations happening on the 4th floor?
Oh, okay, Councillor. I'll start off here, and I might get Breton and John to chime in, and maybe Jacques on anything they may want to comment on. So in terms of corporate communications, right now, I think our staff complement is 20. Our regular complement before this budget was 22 FTEs that we put forward as part of our existing service model. And in the budget we brought forward in January, we had 3 additional positions based on a new service model and org structure that the CAO approved, which would have gave us a total of 25 positions. I can tell you that corporate comms are working at you know, full capacity in terms of supporting this organization through the COVID crisis. In an emergency situation, that's when corporate comms are busier than ever. So we're at 20 FTEs right now. So we have two vacancies that we're taking a pause on through the hiring freeze, as well as the 3 positions that were approved by the CAO that were brought forward as part of our budget. In terms of working from home, yes, most corporate communication staff are working from home now. We did have a fairly extensive presence at the EOC during, I think, the first month of the COVID crisis. Right now, when we have media briefings, we have some public affairs staff that goes into help in that regard. With regard to, you were talking about or the communications officer for the Counselor Support Office. Again, that position is put on hold as part of the hiring freeze. So that position in this budget is not anticipated to be filled. The 311 after hours, what I talked about there in terms of an outsourcing model would be based on a per call. So we would basically get charged by the number of calls that we intake. So, you know, just doing some rough math on that, we figured it could be around 35,000 a year. So we could still have significant savings there of around $100,000. Excuse me. City Hall, I think in terms of the space fully utilized, I would say yes. There's not a whole lot of additional space at City Hall. I know there is the old clerk's office and where the executive director, I think, report center still operates out of that office. But I'm going to ask John McPherson if he could comment on City Hall plans for renovation and space utilization.
All right, John. How are you?
Good. John McPherson, Manager of Corporate Facility Design and Construction. Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. The plans for any fourth floor renovations are currently on hold. The design work is progressed, so we'll finish the design work and just hold on that. Funds that would have went to that project, we'll look to defer those to other state of good repair projects as a contingency. In terms of space utilization, on the main floor, we were looking at opportunities to increase some meeting space, but at the current moment, no firm plans as part of this budget.
Councillor Whitman? You're on mute, I think, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Follow-up question, Jerry or John. You mentioned significant presence at the EOC during the first month. So I assume that they're no longer there, and significant presence at media briefings, which we haven't done in a long time. So I'm just wondering, all the folks that are working from home, I know that we had someone on Cogswell and we have someone on these other files. What are they working on currently?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And I'm probably going to ask Breton to chime in and give you some of the specifics there. But what I did mention in terms of working from home, our print shop, they would need to come into the production facility to do any print jobs that are required. But you know, the staff there I can tell you, are very busy. We've had to sort of redeploy from other areas in terms of how how we respond to the COVID communications. Certainly, you know, you mentioned Cogswell and things like that, but there's other initiatives that have come up. So, for example, I think it's called the transportation. The transportation plan that around the streets, we have corporate communications are a stakeholder in that. And certainly, you know, as the economy starts to open up, as the city starts to open up, you know, we'll need to engage. Corporate communications will need to work on initiatives there. I mean, even for example, around you know, transit ridership and in terms of getting transit ridership back. But I'm going to turn it over to Breton, and he can give you some more specifics on specific things that they are working on. Breton, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Jerry. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. As Jerry mentioned earlier, we've got a couple things at play here. Typically, we would have, just say in January, we would have had about 22 positions, and the vacancies that have been created since then remain in place. So we've got fewer people, but the demand of the work has been on par or higher, depending upon the area. So public affairs, as an example, in that first month, as you mentioned, the demand for support on site at the EOC was significant. So we were rolling through with multiple people on site for the first week, dialed it back in keeping with public health directives, and then facilitating the media briefings at the time. So we did about 8 media briefings on site at the time, and we maintained that facility there with the cameras and whatnot because we know we may need to do one at any time, and we do expect we will need to do more to update on municipal service levels impacts as we enter the recovery stage in the coming weeks. So while the demand from comms increases, it has shifted. There have been several municipal projects that we've had been forecasted for that are on hold, municipal projects, but these have been replaced with the demand for support with COVID-19. So if we look at media relations, putting aside the media briefings, the demand for issues management, crisis comms, emergency comms support has resulted in a level of public service announcements and facilitating media inquiries that is at least on par with what we would have seen in previous periods between early March and mid-May. Similarly, the demand on internal communications has grown. We're still maintaining and pushing out information through all our channels, whether it's the website, social media, print collateral, and that ties into the print shop and the work they're doing, as well as advertising, because we did push out the Apart Together advertising campaign that is helping people understand that they need to go to our website for the latest information. And then we're, of course, transitioning into the recovery phase. The demand for comms will continue, not only as we continue with COVID-19, but picking up on the strategic priorities of council that staff will be advancing over the coming weeks and months post-budget.
Thank you very much. I'm not convinced. Thank you for pausing the 4th floor renovations, and thank you for not growing from 20 to 25. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Nichol.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to see you. And I guess my question is about us being connected here because it's about the technology. The line item where it says ICT infrastructure recap, I just wondered at 1.9 million, was that looked at with a critical eye, and what is the critical piece that is part of that 1.9 million?
I think Jane will want to take that question.
You don't know anything about the technology, Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the councillor. So all of the business tools, by and large, anything that's a bundled project would come through us. So the ICT infrastructure recap is a bundled project, and essentially what that is setting up new items or making sure that the applications that we have can run. So it's server recapitalization, network recapitalization, fiber network experience. So really it's the guts, if you will, that keeps everything going. With more people working from home, it's important that our systems and our foundations are stable there. So some of that is there's a bit of carry forward in that, I believe. So we have had a good look at that to get it to the area that we feel is prudent.
Yeah, that's why I figured it was mostly all commitments that have been made so to keep us functioning the way we do. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Thanks to Jerry and Breton for reminding us that I think the majority of people who work in comms actually don't work as spokespeople. I think it's important that we remember that when we're talking about how, you know, one of the critical things that I think was being printed in the since COVID started would have been the tax bill. So I think they probably were pretty busy doing those. My question is around the corporate accommodation piece, which Councillor Austin was talking about, and that Jane was answering. So I guess I understand in principle and I support it. You know that I'm a big supporter of increasing, you know, getting the quality of our office space up to a similar quality of other governments and businesses. And I think those renovations and those movements make sense. But I guess I'm wondering why now with that cost showing up? Like if we're talking about freezing capital and hiring and all this other stuff, why is this something that's appearing now in the budget, especially if it's not going to result in savings in this fiscal year? I thought that was kind of the focus of this recast. You know, the swing space idea makes sense, but is this the right time, especially given that it wasn't, I think this is new, wasn't in the original budget. And you said that this would save money in terms of the cost of leasing space for swing space when we're moving or renovating other spaces. Is the net saving already in that cost, or is that something we'll realize later once we get to a place where it's being utilized as swing space? Like, so will that savings even be realized in this budget, or is that coming? So I guess that's two questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillors. So I'll answer the swing space first. So you'll see those savings when the project gets launched, or when the accommodation is the changes are being made. So it is not in the budget now. So that's when you'll see the savings. And often we use swing space, if you will, to stand up project offices as well. So it's really about being able to have some of that space available. The reason why we're doing this now is really it's an opportunity. We have a significant footprint on the 3rd floor of Duke Tower, where I'm sitting now, that the lease is ending. We need to do something with this space. We have been occupying this space for a very long time. We're not using the square footage to its best advantage, so we have space that isn't being utilized properly. We also have planning and development that have been, quite frankly, waiting for a while to have their offices consolidated. There's the space they occupy over at 2nd floor Alderney doesn't function well. There's also the lease space that
that's very kind. I remember the first time I had a meeting in Alderney 2 with Kelly Denty. She had to use a pen to turn the light on so she didn't electrocute herself in one of the meeting rooms. So yeah, I agree. There's a problem there. It needs investment.
Right. So given this, and then the Mellor Avenue. So given the size of planning and development and the size of this space, that the lease ends in February 21. There is an opportunity to advance some of the moves with planning and development. It is very hard to get space at that footprint for a large group downtown, and then it also works very well with a number of the taxi inspections and things. So when I say that's an opportunity, that's what I mean by that. So it is that collapsing of the space. We have also been out in the market to, as I said, for legal, for ICT, for a small group for transit, GRIA. I think that's it. And finance will be going back to Alderney Gate. So really what it is, it's looking at the space that we have. Our objective is to shrink our footprint by 20%. So that's where the savings comes in. It's about using the space better. It's about more functionality. The other thing, and I believe Councillor Walker raised the question about space as we come back. We're also working with EOC on the guidelines for the use of space, what office space looks like, collaboration space, how many people can be in a meeting at once as part of the response to COVID. So the corporate accommodations group is really looking at all of those aspects on ensuring the safety of staff and any public that comes into our spaces that way. So it is as I said, it is an opportunity where we do have this space available now. And we will see savings both through a smaller footprint as well as giving up lease space.
So that's much clearer. I think if we could get a memo updating us on the corporate accommodation strategy, kind of what the next bunch of moves may be, recognizing it's flexible, I think that would help. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Was there any, Councillor Russell, did you have more? I don't see any of the names on the list. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak?
Yes, sir, if I could.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwood, I'm looking at the two centers, Duke Street and Acadia School, and I'm looking at them both closing ostensibly permanently. And so this means that the walk-in traffic is going to have to go somewhere else. I'm wondering if you know the statistics of the walk-in traffic, how much of it, I guess on a percentage basis, went to Duke Street and to the Acadia School. And just please remind me where the other walk-in centers are.
I think you're on mute, Jerry.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yep,
yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. So we have 4 customer service centers. So we have Duke Street in downtown Halifax, Bayers Road storefront, Acadia School in Sackville, and Alderney storefront, which is in Dartmouth, downtown Dartmouth at Alderney Gate. I guess what we're looking at here is in terms of or where we have planning. So we have planning offices in Bayers Road storefront and Alderney Gate. We have planning. That's where we can, you know, get permits and things of that nature. So, you know, what we're looking at here is sort of aligning our walk-up offering aligned with where we do all services. So planning, and then, you know, tax payments for other services, etc. So one of the things that we can provide in terms of a briefing note is a percentage. I don't have that here right at my fingertips, the percentage of traffic. Obviously, there will be some traffic and increased transactions at the Alderney Center and at the Bayers Road Center. Mm-hmm. But I think what's important to note here is that you know, in the capital budget, council is making significant investments in technology. You know, in the new current fiscal year, we'll be looking to launch you know, phase 1 of the new permitting and licensing software. That's going to be a game changer in terms of walk-up or face-to-face transactions from the permitting side of the business. So more people are going to be doing you know, online permitting, getting their licenses online. And then there's other significant investments we're making, you know, in SAP, where people will be able to get information on their tax account online and pay online. Obviously, if we go there, we will have to certainly communicate and promote online services, and that's where our corporate communications team can certainly come in and provide some communications and marketing campaign around the promotion of those services. So that, you know, when we're looking at closing 2 centers, not taking that lightly at all, but we're looking to align it with our current service offering, where we have sort of planning offices that you can come in and do business at. But we can provide some more information in a briefing note based on transaction volumes and percentage of business. But,
and that's,
you know, this is predicated on the investment that council is making in systems and technology to do online business, as well as, you know, changing behaviors around using online as opposed to walk up.
Okay, so this sounds like it would have happened anyway. If the business model is changing to do more online, it sounds like you would have been closing 2 of the contact centers anyway, and so this is an opportunity to do that. I appreciate that. I would caution against closing all of them. There will be some people who will not use an online option. There are a number of people nowadays who simply don't computer, and there was an expectation a while ago that with the ability to vote electronically, the response numbers would go up, and that simply did not materialize. So I would caution against saying more people are going to use this, therefore it'll solve all of our problems. We absolutely still need the open contact center. So I appreciate the response to that. And I do believe that that is the end of it. I would appreciate again if you could share with me a date when you know when the new hours of 311 might be. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Nobody else?
Just to point out, Mr. Mayor, there's also a part-time service count in the Muscatawbin Harbor Library shared with the Recreation Office. We can take some municipal payments there.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, Jerry, thank you to you and to your team. We appreciate it. We know that you guys are working hard through all this, and we appreciate the we appreciate the hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Regional Council.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm wondering, is Evangeline on the phone with us now? Auditor General?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to go ahead and do your piece now, Evangeline?
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah, why don't we let you do your piece?
Okay, mine is pretty brief, Mr. Mayor. So good afternoon, everybody. As you can see from the memo that was circulated to you, we are looking at saving some funds, primarily through 2, I guess, vacancy management measures. One involves not backfilling a maternity leave that we currently have, and the other involves not filling a vacant auditor position until the 4th quarter of 2020-21. Between the 2 of those, we expect to achieve $104,000 in savings. And as I've indicated in the memo that I circulated, collectively, our non-compensation items in our budget amount to less than $100,000. So rather than detailing a number of small changes, some of which could have been in the order of $1,000 to $2,000 to individual items, we do expect to have some additional savings in non-compensation items, and we will simply monitor those through our monthly forecast process. So that's our plan to achieve some savings, and if anyone has any questions on it, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the Auditor General? All right. Thank you.
One question.
I got a question from Councillor Whitman.
Thank you, Mayor Savage, and thank you, colleagues. Evangeline, could you just, you mentioned that almost all of your budget is people. Could you just remind us how many staff you have and how big your budget is for those tuning in?
Evangeline, are you there? We may have lost the Auditor General.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a bit of a a novel department where it's so high in staffing and nothing else. And I appreciate the work that that she does for us. I just wanted the public to have an idea of how elaborate an operation it is and how important it is.
Yeah, so if she can't get there, her original budget was $1,126,900, and she's lopped off 104,000 of that, so it's $1,022,900 is now the budget.
Thank you.
Councillor Hinsby's asking the status of the AG website. Are you still with us, Evangeline? Jacques, maybe you could ask her to send a note back to council about the status of the Auditor General's website. CAO, could you do that for us?
We'll look after it, Mayor.
Thank you, John. Okay. All right. Thank you to that extensive report. All right. We're going to move to planning and development. So I assume that would be Kelly. Are you with us, Kelly?
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
A little bit. Is there better volume?
See what I can do here. Does that sound any better?
A bit, yeah.
All right.
Go
I
ahead.
can go a little louder and see what happens there. How's that?
That's good, I think.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Appreciate you having me here today. I'll go through my budget adjustments quickly. On the line with me also is Peter Duncan, who bore the brunt of a lot of these. So Peter is here to help answer any questions as they come up. So our target reduction was about 16% of our net budget. So it was about 2.3 million from our net budget of about 14.2 million. To give you a sense of that. Our approach was to maintain core services while reducing expenses and maximizing savings through vacancies. So in terms of how we slice that pie for that target, you've got vacancy management coming in around 32% of that. That amounts to about 23 FTEs. Those FTEs are spread amongst our five divisional service areas. Consulting fees and contracts account for about 22%. Also in there is a new water quality monitoring program, beach testing, and Lake Bannock weeds at about 15%. You can see on that when we did this, we made a guess that we made an assumption, I guess, based on public health orders that beaches would not be opening. So that's a risk going forward. Grants at around 11% of that reduction, and then miscellaneous adjustments, training, travel, conferences, office expenses, etc., coming in at around 19%. There's also an adjustment to our revenues. So while business has definitely been good for us, we did try to make a conservative estimate that some of the revenues would not be realized to the tune of about 615,000. That's about 8%. Assuming that some folks won't proceed with projects based on their new economic reality. And that also includes sidewalk cafes and just what we've seen for historical volumes on certain permits. We also reduced all of the items on the budget adjustment list because they were essentially net new, with the exception of the food action plan that was kept in there for $100,000 as a grant or as to help with the implementation measures. There's certainly been a large uptick on the mobile food market and other work that our food folks are doing to help with vulnerable communities. Just to remind you what was on that budget adjustment list, our heritage incentives. We were going to double that grant from 150 to 300K. Accessible taxi incentives, $100,000. We removed that. That was done in anticipation of fall amendments to the charter that would allow us to give grants to businesses. Took that out. And then some staff. We had heritage research staff, one person there to help with support for the heritage districts, and 3 staff at half a year for Halifax 2020 at 137K. We'll look to absorb that with the existing staff that we have. unfortunately. Again, noting the hiring freeze and trying to do more with what we have. In terms of kind of the cuts that will probably draw your attention, cuts to our grants for the feral cat trap spay neuter release program, our contract with the SPCA, reducing that by about 50% to $25,000. We have talked with the SPCA, and they seem to think that that's probably, you know, accurate relative to what they expect to produce this year, especially given the reduced capability of vet clinics right now operating under restrictions. Some consulting and study money reductions, so integrated mobility plan studies, functional designs, performance measurements, all of that related to that work. We've cut that significantly. So what that means are specialized studies to inform work or performance measurement will take a hit as a result of that. But what it means is that we'll look to internalize that work to our existing staff. So like all of these cuts, what it means is with reduced staff and with reduced ability to be able to do that work with consultants, it will get done, but it will take longer. Again, I mentioned earlier Lake Banook weed harvesting and the testing of water at beaches. That was to the tune of about $290,000. So we might need to look at that. But Lake Banook, we decided that we would cut that because there was no competitions there this year. So that's $210,000 of that $290,000. If we were to add the beach testing back in, that's about $80,000, just to give you a sense of that. Okay. We did keep some money in our account to cover blue-green algae blooms and to respond to that, and also about $45,000 worth of contingency money to account for unknowns that might come up through water quality needs. We also have kept in our budget $85,000 for electric vehicle strategy. That is an RFP that's, I believe it's on the street, and the award is pending, so that's still in our program. So that's essentially kind of the overview of the cuts. Like I said, it's to the tune of about $2.3 million, which represents about 16% of our net budget of $14.2. That's the overview. If you'd like to get into questions, we can take those now.
Okay. Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of quick questions for Kelly. So you said it'd be $80,000 if we wanted to add the beach water testing back into the budget. I'm not sure exactly what the process is, but I'd certainly like to put that in the parking lot, because I think now that beaches are open, that's going to be something that will definitely be needed this summer season. So I'd like to put beach water testing back onto the parking lot list for $80,000. And just quick question about the trap, neuter, and release program. That reduction is sort of born out of the fact that most vets are not doing that type of surgery on a by request basis at this point.
Yeah, it's done through SPCA, so they have a spay day that they promote. So we reached out to them to determine what are you thinking in terms of this year. So they were suggesting that, again, based on how vets are operating right now, it would probably be reduced by about half, but that seemed reasonable.
Okay, no, and I just wanted to confirm that you've been in touch with SPCA and they're cool with this reduction, and no, appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So, Deputy, you're putting a motion on the floor for something in the parking lot?
I am, yes, to put the beach water testing back in the budget for $80,000.
So, and that's not in Councillor Mason's list, right? John?
Not sure.
Question on procedure, if you don't mind. Are we assuming that Councillor Mason's report has come back and we've approved it, or are we voting? Okay, so we are voting on the items individually. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but if they're in Councillor Mason's motion, they will come back.
They will come back as part of the further bid. So yes, if it's on that list we now have that Ms. Fraser provided, then I think we're fine.
But is it? I don't know if it's on the list.
I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Jane?
It is on the list. It's just aggregated into the full number that Kelly was speaking about.
Okay. Deputy, you're okay with that coming back then?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
If it's covered off, then that's fine. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Kelly. So I want to ask about lakes. Is the beach piece is covered off, which is good because I think with beaches reopening, it's essential that we're doing the testing of the lakes and also that we have the lifeguard staff there, as we discussed on Friday. So that's good. The piece I'm wondering about, Kelly, is the lake water, the larger sort of monitoring program that's been in the works now for, I think this is year 3. And we still haven't had the Banook report come back to council yet. I'm wondering about this cut, what this does to that. Is it hurry up and wait another year then?
Essentially, in terms of shrinking the budget to deal with core services, that's one of the ones that took the hit, right? We had the 150 in there to start a lake program. It would be a wait and see. So Peter is on the line. I don't know if he has an update to give us on the Banook study. I could throw that to him if you're looking for some detail on that, but that's what it would need to defer the 150 now that we had earmarked to start a water quality monitoring program.
Would this be included then in Councillor Mason's motion as well?
I will go to the virtual front of the room to answer that question.
I don't believe so. I don't see it where it has been added there.
So the lake proposed, the new lake water quality monitoring program is not included in Councillor Mason's motion?
If it's not clearly enumerated on the list, I would suggest that you break it out and add it to the parking lot for fear of getting testing.
Well, I'd like to move that to the parking lot if assuming colleagues will support. It is one that has been a long-standing source of contention in the community. We did our study now. I mean, I think it's 2 summers ago. So now we're coming to summer number 3. At a certain point, we start to look fairly ridiculous for the lack of action on it.
Second by Mancini.
Okay, Councillor Austin, just say which one it is again.
This would be the water quality monitoring program, not the beach water testing. This is the bigger sort of scientific work that we used to do as a municipality that was cut back in 2012. And then we did we had some consultants in to take a look at what a future program might look like. And that work was done. And then we also had the Lake Banook study going on and all of that for the last 2 years. I mean, I know there's been some work going on behind the scenes, but we haven't really had much to show for it.
Okay, so that's 150,000?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, my apologies. The water quality monitoring project for $150,000 is on the list. I got confused with the Lake Banook. I thought it was a separate study, so my apologies for that. It is on the list. Okay, well, I have no motion to make then. I don't know where I'm at time here.
You got 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Well, that might be enough, Mr. Mayor. So the accessible taxis piece, I'm okay with removing that from the budget because I don't think we were going to be spending that money this year anyway, because we still need the legislative changes to come from the province, and then we need to stand up a program. When we had this on the budget options list, we put it on there because we wanted to send a signal that this was important to us. But I mean, it was very doubtful we were going to be spending that anyway. So I think that's more of a 2021 item, as sad as that is. Then the other piece I wanted to quickly speak to is the employees. Councillor Mason's motion would include the 3 employees for Halifax.
Potentially, I think the motion was to go back to normal vacancy levels. So I think we would have to figure out what that means in terms of money.
Okay, well, if we can identify whether that's included, because eventually we're all going to go back to work, emissions will go up again, and rather than COVID being the pressing crisis of our time, it will be back to climate change in short order because the fundamentals of our civilization are still not sustainable. And, you know, I get the need to control hiring and for vacancy, but those 3 employees for Halifax, I mean, this has to be one of our top priorities. And to have a small exception for 3 employees for that, to me seems very reasonable given where it sits and how pressing an issue that is. So if that's not included in the in Mason's motion, I would like to move the staff into the budget.
Seconded. Zarowski.
Jane, it's not in Councilor Mason's motion, is it?
Mr. Mayor, it was on the list, but it was included in error. When we grabbed all the information, we put it in there by mistake. It would be under the hiring freeze, so it would be captured under there as well. It's for $109,000.
So I don't think that hiring 3 people and how many people do we employ? 4,000 now. Having a 3 staff exception to the hiring freeze, I don't think is going to break anything.
Okay, so to be clear, that's the Halifax approved list. That's 109,000. And Jane, we need to put it on the list if we want to discuss it, correct? And have it come back?
I think that would be the best approach, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there discussion on that, colleagues? That was seconded by Councillor Zarowski.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, it's 137,000, just for the math.
Okay, it says 109 on the list I have, but
So coming from the BAL list, Jane, it was 137. So just to make sure we're looking at the right numbers.
okay. Are we ready for the question on that, colleagues? So we're voting on Councillor Austin's motion, as seconded by Councillor Zarowski, that we rescind the rescission. In other words, that we go ahead with the Halifax employees for this year, 6-month positions. Are we ready for the question? Okay, Cheryl?
Councillor Stretch.
Against the motion.
Councillor Hensby.
Affirmative.
Councillor Karsten. Councillor Nichol.
Yes, for the parking lot.
Councillor Austin.
Yes.
Councillor Mancini.
For the motion.
Councillor Mason.
For the motion.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith.
You're on mute, Lindell.
Councillor Cleary.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Zarowski.
For the motion.
Councillor Whitman.
No.
Deputy Mayor Blackburn.
Voting yes on the motion?
Councillor Russell.
Against the motion?
Councillor Outhit.
Yes, for now.
And Mayor Savage.
Yes.
That's 10 in favor and 5 against.
The motion is carried 10-5. Councillor Hensby. Councillor Hensby?
Just unmuting the microphone here. Just a couple questions on Kelly, the status of our building permits. What's the experience rate been so far? And up, down, or even? Or will we be having an adjustment service there, as well as will we still be doing our on-site inspections that are required at different intervals during construction phases? Want to know the status of that? Are we going to be on time or behind on our inspection scheduling?
Permits have been very good. In fact, our volumes are actually higher during the past 2-month period this year than they were last year. We're a little concerned about that given the state of the economy, but the construction industry has not shut down. So we're watching that closely. That's why I built in a small reduction to revenues just to see what's going to happen as things pan out. Inspections are still carrying on. We're doing all of our mandatory inspections inside and outside of buildings. And those are on time. Again, volumes continue to increase on those, and we've had excellent cooperation with construction industry and contractors. And our staff have just been fantastic about keeping up with that work since we've moved to an online platform. Everything we're doing is virtual. It's from, obviously we're doing inspections on site, but staff are only contacting the office when they need to access manual files. Everything is done through electronic means.
But still, the on-site inspections are going to be required, and hopefully they'll be still on time and not delaying the construction industry any?
Certainly not. We have a regular call with the construction industry 2 or 3 times a week as need be to work with them on any hiccups along the way. And no, our inspection services are very good right now.
I can ask for further clarification. The heritage incentive grants that we're trying to boost and try to preserve some of our built heritage in the municipality. So we have a program proposed cut here. Has that been a part of the inclusionary motion that Councillor Mason put forward earlier, or is this something over and above that?
This was part of the previous motion. So the previous motion had been to increase the grants by 150,000. The current grant program is 150, so this would double it and put it at 3. Again, to meet our targets, we went back to the existing level of grant at 150.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering about the stormwater and wastewater testing. Can you give an update on that? Are they included in this? Are there any changes? What's going along with that?
I'm going to ask Peter to chime in on that. I'm not, we're certainly working on our joint stormwater standards with Halifax Water, but I think you're probably going to want a bit more detail than I can provide. So Peter, you can help out. That's appreciated. Thank you.
Peter, you there?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
We got you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Peter Duncan, Manager of Infrastructure Planning. If I could ask through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, what exactly did you mean by stormwater and wastewater testing?
I'm just wondering if those are being conducted and to what level. Do we expect to see any impacts by the budget reductions?
Okay, we don't currently do any wastewater testing. That obviously would fall under the purview of Halifax Water. We do administer several stormwater management bylaws that do involve some level of on-site testing. None of those will be impacted.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm looking at the capital document, and I'm looking at the streetscapes section of it. There is one line item for streetscaping that has a capital cost of 400,000, and one line item for tactical urbanism that has a capital cost of 640,000. Neither of them are slated for reductions, and I'm just wondering if you could speak to what those would include, and I'm wondering if we can put them on the list for consideration for reduction, depending on what they include.
I'm going to get Peter to respond to both of those as well.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the streetscaping project, I have to watch myself because there's several accounts here. This is basically to do miscellaneous streetscaping work in the downtown, and that would essentially be the purview of council if you wanted to cut that or not. The tactical urbanism, I will say that is the account that we had tagged to fund a lot of the temporary works that will be needed as we get back to work, in terms of pop-up sidewalks, pop-up bike lanes, and so on. So that was a source of funding for that work. So I would recommend not to cut that tactical urbanism.
Okay. As far as the streetscaping goes, you said it was various items downtown. Presumably these would be things that are not covered under streetscape renewal or the Argyle Grafton or the Spring Garden Road projects. So what is this 400,000?
They would be, I would describe them as opportunity costs as opportunities come up to do work in the downtown. We don't have them fully scoped out at this point.
So I'm wondering what the risk would be in holding this off for a year. If these are opportunity costs, presumably the same opportunities would arise next year. And we could defer this 400,000.
Yeah, that's through you, Mr. Mayor. That's solely at council's discretion.
I'd second that, Whitman.
In that case, I will move ahead with making motion to defer the streetscaping cost $400,000, project CT 1900001.
Second, Whitman.
Basically, the idea is this falls within the priorities that I have set for myself to look at everything within this budget, which is first is health and safety, second is food security, and third is shelter, and then look at the economy. And this does not fit in any of the health and safety, food security, or shelter criteria. So I'm simply looking to, as I say, defer this cost for a year. It's an opportunity cost. It is something that will come up, but it is not something that we have seen a hard and fast plan around. So that is why I'm looking to move it off.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Whitman. Discussion on that. I see Councillor Austin, I think, on this. Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies. Peter, did you say that this is a kind of a general opportunities account? You don't have a specific what would be impacted by this?
That is right. I can't tell you with absolute certainty what will be impacted. Typically, this would we would use this a lot of the times with private developers as they reinstate if we wanted to put something back that was maybe outside of the Red Book standards. If you know, one of the bids wanted something. So I can't. I could take it away and maybe get a list of what we intend to do over the short term, but I can't really tell you what the long term impact would be.
Is this something that we have in the budget each year, and then some years doesn't get spent, or is this is this a regular line item for us?
Yes, it is. It was consolidated a few years ago, and it's been sort of a line item ever since then. Yes.
Okay, and so are there years that you don't spend it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't tell you what the burn rate specifically year over year on the account is. I don't believe there's ever been a year where we haven't spent something.
Okay, I mean, on one hand, to me, this isn't this isn't a place that I want to particularly search for savings in, because remodeling our streets to me is key, not just for health and safety, but also for economic development. It does many of those things together in the urban core. Although I am somewhat tempted by Councillor Russell's motion just to get more information as to what this is, because we don't seem to have a lot right at hand. And I appreciate as staff you're going through a budget, and we can grab whatever we want out of this giant list of things and then surprise you with. So I'm tempted to say yes just for information purposes, but it's not an area that I really see us making a whole lot of reductions in, because I think this is a priority. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cleary, are you on this motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just very quickly, so what I'd like, and I'll certainly support the motion for information to come back, because what I'd like to see is what we have spent for the last 2 years from this account, and any projects that might have been anticipated by staff for this coming year. And the reason I say that is, and maybe this is a question that could illuminate some of that, from this account, would we have spent any money, say, for example, on the Gottingen Street bus lane when we worked with the North End Business Association to look at some street furniture, the RFB that went in on the sidewalk there temporarily and other things? Because I'm thinking as we work with development all around the city and as we work with the business improvement districts to get those main streets reopened fully, this money might be well used in that regard. So I guess I'd like that information report. If you could just comment if you know, was any money from this account spent on Gottingen Street when the bus lane went in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe anything was spent during the actual capital project of installing the bus lane, but there might have been some money spent, for example, around some private developments to enhance some of the streetscaping. I'm thinking in front of the Velo and places like that. I know there was some money spent. I just can't tell you exactly where.
No worries. Thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So can we, who knows what Councillor Smith's asking to see the motion. The motion is to, it's the different than what we're taking things off the list. Councillor Russell is putting on the list the $400,000 for streetscaping. I'm not sure, Cheryl, if there's anything we can do that makes that more clear and get that on the chat line. Councillor Mancini on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So your words just confused me. He's taking it off the list, right? He's taking it, he's causing it, he wants it to be added to the list of reduction, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm okay with putting it on the parking lot. I am concerned about it, as some others have mentioned also. You know, when you're looking at our business and the economy and improving, you know, our streetscaping is critical component to that, I believe. So I need more information also. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what Councillor Russell's doing. I'm fine putting it on the list, but we'll look forward to more information when it comes back, Peter. Thank you.
Okay. So, in terms of the motion, Councillor Smith, are you clear on what the motion is now? We should see what the motion is. Here we are. Thank you, Cheryl. The motion is to defer streetscaping costs of $400,000 in the project for 1 year. Is it to defer or eliminate? Paul, is it to defer or to eliminate?
It would be to defer it for 1 year.
So you're going to put it in next year's budget on top of next year's 400,000?
If that makes sense, yes. Yes.
Okay, it's been revised. Cheryl's revised that for us.
Okay, and I made a mistake when I was looking at the budget number, sorry, at the account number. There are only 3 zeros in there, not 4. So I apologize for that.
There would be information coming back as part of the parking lot, so for councilors to see the implications.
Okay. Anybody else on the motion? Let's call the roll.
Councillor Stretch.
I did have a question. You missed me on the list. Am I able to ask it before I vote?
There we are. Go ahead.
Just wanted to clarify. So this is basically just potentially putting this off for 1 year. And further to your clarification, Mayor, that would double it up in the future. Shouldn't this just be to eliminate it this year?
My initial thought was that Councillor Russell would want to eliminate it, not just, but he said defer. Yeah. Councillor Russell, what's your pleasure on this? Do you want to defer this or eliminate it for this year?
I am comfortable with both options. Basically, the idea is we are looking to save money in this budget year. We don't know what our costs are going to be. We don't know what our revenues are going to be. And so I'm looking to reduce what I can that will not have an impact on the criteria that I've got listed. So.
Okay, either way, I'm voting for the motion, Your Worship. Thank you.
Just, Cheryl, before you go on, I wanted to just speak to this. I'll support this for some of the reasons that other people have said, but I believe very strongly that one of the ways the city can help is to actually support our main streets and our bids when the reopening comes. So I would have to be convinced when this report comes back that it's a good thing, because I think this is one of those areas where we can actually play a big role, and I'm not inclined to take money away from things that would help retail, restaurants, bars, and everything else. But for the sake of having a look at it, I'm okay with that. Go ahead. Councillor Stretch has voted for, I think, or against?
For the motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Affirmative.
Cheryl, your mic is off.
Councillor Carson. Councillor Nichol.
For more information.
Councillor Austin.
Yes, for information.
Councillor Mancini.
For the motion.
Councillor Mason.
For the motion.
Councillor Smith.
You're muted, Linda.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Cleary.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Zarowski.
For the motion.
Councillor Whitman.
Yes.
Councillor Blackburn.
Voting yes on the motion?
Councillor Russell.
For the motion.
Councillor Outhit.
Yes.
Councillor Smith.
He's having trouble. On the chat line, he says it's
I'm
for
going to
the
say
motion.
for the motion, okay? All right, and Mayor Savage.
For the motion, that motion carries. I think next on the list is Councillor Mancini.
That's correct.
Yes, Councillor Mancini.
Mr. Mayor, thanks very much. Look, my questions were answered, so I don't need the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adams. Councillor Adams.
Councillor Adams is not here today.
Pardon me?
Councillor Adams is not here today.
He was, okay.
I am. I'm
go
here.
ahead.
Man,
Go ahead,
can't
Steve.
get rid of me that easy. You gotta wait a few more months. Thank you, Worship. A question for Kelly regarding the TNR. And I understand that there's just not the capacity to do the neutering or the spaying at this point in time. Is that a reasonable conclusion or suggestion? Okay.
That's the assumption. That's right.
Sure. Okay. So, is this an elimination of the $25,000, or when there's capacity to do these, will the regular budget be brought back and then another 25 added, or is this eliminated until our next process of addressing budget issues?
There was the what had been approved, the 50,000 per year for 5 years. So we're simply forecasting that we're only going to spend 25,000 of that this year. If for whatever reason we can spend more and there's budget available, I think we'd like to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Outhit, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to turn the camera off here because, well, I'm having a bandwidth issue here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I have questions for Kelly Denty. Kelly, the other day when I spoke to Dave, and I'm just talking about projects and functional plans and whatnot that you're putting on hold. The other day when I spoke to Dave Reedy, or asked a question for Dave Reedy, he mentioned that BRT and Ferries Rapid Transit was going forward because of the work that had done and then what they can do now in-house. Is that the case as well with the Bedford Highway functional plan? Because you mentioned functional plans and that alarmed me a little bit because that functional plan for the Bedford Highway is very close related to future development, but also to the rapid transit plan. So that's my first question. My second question probably will be more for Peter Duncan. It might be for you, Kelly, is the Hammond's Plains at Bluewater Road. A little bit of update on that flooding situation there. And the same with the Larry Utek and the roundabout at our portion of it at the Broad Street, which again is an opportunity cost because we have the CCC paying for a good portion of that. So if I could get an update on the functionality plan, the Bedford Highway, the flooding at Bluewater, and the roundabouts at Larry Utek and Broad Street, please.
In terms of the Bedford Highway functional plan, that work's done and the report is on its way back to council. We're actually targeting the next meeting for the 26th. So it would come along with the bus rapid transit. So what we're talking about is new studies of that ilk that we might have to do in order to inform future projects. Those ones are in the can and you'll see those. I'll get Peter to talk to you about Bluewater, and he is the expert on the Broad Street South roundabout. So I would only want to.
I'm going to view that as good news, Kelly. Thank you. Hi, Peter.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So on the Bluewater Road flooding, and I hate to do this to you, but that's being led by Transportation and Public Works. I know there was a drainage study carried out, and I believe they're moving forward to tender, but I wouldn't want to comment any further beyond that. On the Broad Street roundabout, that's in the proposed capital budget for 2021-22.
Okay, we were hoping to do that sooner. Was that as a result of the budget being recast, or was that always the plan? Because I think the developer's ready with their portion now, Peter.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they are ready to go ahead with the roundabout now. They're hoping that we would be able to do it, moving ahead to fiscal 2020, but as it stands right now, it's been pushed out to 2021. And it was that way in the original draft budget too, I think, that was presented to council.
All right, so I won't put it on the parking lot then. All right, thank you all for the update.
Thank you. Let me just see the list. I think that was on the motion. Councillor Hensby, you wanted to go again?
Yes, sir. I just want to have clarification on the motion that Councillor Mason had earlier about the heritage planner positions that we're trying to put back. Is that included, the heritage research planner?
Did you hear that, Kelly? I didn't quite get that.
I think he's referencing the heritage research planner that we're suggesting would be cut from the budget adjustment list. Perhaps Jane can confirm what's on the list.
Thank you, Kelly. Through the mayor to Councillor Hensby. That is what similar to the 3 FTEs for Halifax 2050. It probably would be best to have that put on there as a motion. It's covered off under the vacancy management, but it might, for clarity, it might be best to actually move it to the parking lot by a decision of council.
I therefore move.
Okay, I didn't quite catch that.
We therefore move the research planner position back on the budget. Parking lot discussion.
Seconded, Whitman.
Which one is it?
Could you repeat that? I missed it.
Okay, so this is the heritage research planner for $80,000?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
That's moved by Councillor Hensby, seconded by Councillor Whitman. Jane, did we determine if that's in the other motion or not? It's not?
I don't believe so. I think for clarity, it'd be best to have it specifically indicated to go into the parking lot.
Okay. Councilor Outfit, you got that? So this is the hiring of the Heritage Research Planner of 80,000. Councilor Austin, I think on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for Kelly. It was my understanding with this particular position that it was almost a wash in terms of costs because we are currently spending a bundle on heritage research reports that are being produced by consultants, and that this position would bring a lot of that work that would that's going out to consultant right now in-house.
That's correct. The idea was to bring it in-house and be able to build on that capacity as that position would get trained and get better at it, right? You would retain that knowledge inside of HRM rather than it residing with external consultants.
Is there an actual savings from this, on the external consultant side?
Yeah, we had spent anywhere between 40 and 50,000 annually. So by 80,000, we could own the resource on a permanent basis. So about 30,000. Okay. Think about it. Yes.
Okay, to me that makes some sense, especially given the huge amount of development that we've been getting in the core and potential impacts on heritage. With the new center plan coming in, the incentive to redevelop heritage properties in a compatible way has just gotten that much more attractive. So I wouldn't be surprised if you end up seeing even more work to come in this area. I know the Heritage Advisory Committee has been kept pretty busy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Russell on this?
Thank you very much. I was just waiting for my mic to unmute. I am not going to be able to support this motion. I've been looking at it through the lens again of health and safety, food services and security before I'm looking at the economics of it. And at this point, I can't support it simply because it doesn't fall into any of those buckets, but I appreciate that it is being considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the motion?
Mike, Tim, quickly for Kelly. Kelly, could you just repeat when you were asked a question if there would be a wash or if it would break even? We were talking $80,000. You mentioned that previously it was mentioned that there was consulting fees. Was the $30,000 what we would save, or the $30,000 of the $80,000 we'd still have to come up with? It wasn't quite clear to me.
Yeah, I was. 80,000 would be the estimated cost of the position. We spend anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year in consulting. So for an extra 30, you would have a full-time person dedicated to that rather than it going to consulting.
So for the sake of argument, we're adding 30,000 to the budget, roughly, not 80. Then is that what we're debating?
Roughly, though. I'd have to put a pin in this to go and see how we shaved other consulting costs across the other divisions, but that was our bulk numbers. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's call the roll.
Councillor Stretch?
Against the motion.
Councillor Hensby?
Affirmative.
Councillor Kirsten? Councillor Nichol?
Yes.
Councillor Austin?
In favor.
Councillor Mancini?
Yes.
Councillor Smith?
Am I here? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Against the motion?
Councillor Mason?
For the motion.
Councillor Cleary?
Yes.
Councillor Walker?
For.
Councillor Adams?
Against.
Councillor Zarowski?
For the motion.
Councillor Whitman?
Yes, for Heritage.
Councillor Blackburn?
Voting against the motion?
Councillor Russell?
Against the motion?
Councillor Outed,
Yes.
and Mayor Savage.
Opposed?
That's 10 in favor and 6 against.
10-6, the motion carries. Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Councillor Outhit. Councillor Outhit, did you have something?
No, I didn't. I asked my questions to Kelly. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all we have here.
Mr. Mayor, I was hoping to come back one more time, Councillor
Go
Austin.
ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's more of a question for staff because I did note that we have a capital day circled for later this week. I'm wondering if we should discuss the Sawmill River project now or later this week when we look at what's left of capital, since it's with Kelly and Peter Duncan's shop.
Well, if you have a question of maybe clarification, maybe if there's any motion, we could save that for the capital piece. But if you have a question, why don't you go ahead?
No question at this time. It's more of a motion for later. It's one that I think we should be putting back into the project. There might be, I'm not sure if I can ask what the implications are, Kelly or Peter, for the private developer that's looking to get going on their project in Dartmouth Cove if we don't get moving with our project.
Kelly or Peter?
Yeah, what we can tell you is the money that was in that account was mostly for land acquisition. So without the money earmarked for land acquisition, we wouldn't be able to move ahead. So it would delay things. So we'd have to find the money from another source.
Yeah. Okay. I will circle back on that on Thursday. We'll have the argument there with capital. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else? Kelly and Peter, thank you, folks, and thank you for your work during this time, and particularly your nimbleness in getting things online and taking care of business and everything else. So thank you to your department. Colleagues, we're going to take 15 minutes for good behavior, and when we come back, we are going into finance, legal, CAO, or whatever part of that we can do. So we will take a break, come back at 3:25, and we will be stopping at 4:25 today. Thank you.
who were there.
Laura, are you there?
I am on the meeting.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you can resume again whenever you'd like. Councillor Austin is the only one who hasn't rejoined the meeting.
Okay. Okay, folks, let's continue. Let's take the sign down. Thank you. Okay, we will resume. Thank you, colleagues. We're going to go to finance. This is obviously the finance department budget. It's not all issues to do with finance in the budget, but Jane's own budget. So, Jane, I see you there. Councillor Stretch just leapt back into his seat, so we must be good to go.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane Fraser, Director of Finance, Asset Management, and ICT. I'm going to run through my budget fairly quickly, and then as well a couple of items in the Fiscal Services budget as well. So before I start, I do want to thank certainly my team in Finance, Asset Management, and ICT, both for all of their work in the during the COVID crisis as we move through this. Certainly ICT has been incredibly busy, procurement with inventory management and keeping solicitations going. So I want to thank everyone, and of course the budget team for all the work and everyone that I haven't mentioned. So in FAM ICT, we have a target reduction of about $3.76 million, which is 9.4% reduction from the March 24th budget. We are experiencing revenue losses as well as reductions in expenditures. So the large revenue reductions total about $1.7 million. Biggest one is parking revenue, down $712,000. So that's about 27%. We've stopped collecting parking revenue from Alderney for 4 months, and also the Bell Street and Sackville Street lots are only about 25% capacity, and we also have Metro Park, which is managed for us, which has seen significant drops in their revenue. Facilities, the net loss there is $66,000. It's offset by some savings on lease costs, if you will. So we've deferred rent for businesses that are in our Alderney Gate location until August, or until the state of emergency is lifted, whatever comes first. Once for those businesses whose leases are expiring, what we're going to do is roll that deferred rent into the new lease and have that spread over the remainder of their payment structure. We have false alarm recovery down 28% or $205,000. We had, as part of the budget back in February when I presented, we had received approval to get rid of the 1-900 line, which is for verbal confirmation of taxes being paid. We were expecting to see some increased revenue from that and some savings from the elimination of the line. That hasn't happened. So that's 200,000 tax certificates. We've increased the price of that through council decision by $70 to $75. That's obviously slowed down in the today's environment, so that's down 163,000. Tax sale admin fees, we are not projecting to have any tax sales this year. So these are the revenue there, and then that's obviously offset by any costs and recoveries that we would make under external recoveries. Moving on to the expenditure reductions, printing is down significantly, $280,000, that's 48%. Duke lease replacement, that's $110,000. And that's really depends on, as we were talking about under corporate accommodations, when we move out of the extension for the space here on the 3rd floor, how long that is. So if it's lower, then it's 110 that we save. An extra 270 in external recovery for salt. So those are haulers that come in and get our salt. We charge them a fee and saves them from having to go to the salt mine and haul it from there. Metro Park is down 711, so that's 500,000 transferred to the reserves. as well as management fee based on revenue. It's down significantly. The Microsoft licenses, this is $400,000 that was approved through BAL for the March 24th budget. And what that was to give Active Directory licenses to all employees. So we have removed that. We have kept the $120,000 that was in there for security enhancements. Citizen survey, another item that was on the BAL list, $75,000. That was to do a more robust citizen engagement to set up for the next strategic plan for council. Obviously, this is not the time to do that, so we're going to push that out for a year. As with all business units, training, travel, membership has been cut by 57%. We have kept money in there for online training for our staff. We have a high degree of professional staff. So we have some training there, as well as some staff do have to travel for their work, so local travel is included there. Consulting contracts, other external services, $364,000 reduction. This is cancellation of some of the aspects of the Gartner contract with ICT, all the contract consulting fees for asset management, as well as corporate real estate. Building office other expenditures, $345,000. Equipment purchases down $245 or 17%. This is mainly around the refresh of our devices as well as laptops. So we're pushing those out for a year. And then vacancy management is $2.25 million, which is 10% of just the salary and benefit component. And that's not filling vacancies. Some we've assumed in October and some have been for the full year. We also have OCC, operating cost of capital, as well as overtime in that number. So that is the finance ICT budget. Just very quickly going through fiscal services, because we've talked a lot about these. The reductions are driven primarily by changes in revenue, so detransfer tax, interest revenue, and other revenues, as well as accounting changes. So detransfer tax is down $7.65 million, or 15%. We are seeing experts saying that the housing sales are slowing significantly. Price is still holding, but the sales are down. There may be some opportunistic buying by REITs that will boost this, but we're not counting on that. Interest revenue, $2 million down from uncollected taxes. That was the reduction from 15% to 10% on the interest rate, as well as investment income. We are not expecting to get any big gains on investment income. And then a smaller collection of other revenue for $1.6 million. The biggest one in that is parking meters at $750,000. So that's a total reduction on the revenue side of $12.9 million. On the expenditure side for fiscal services, the short-term loan repayment that's council covered off with Councillor Mason's motion was $31.4 million. That assumes full borrowing of the $188 million. With a 3-year payback. We will obviously be looking at what we think the line of credit should be or the borrowing should be based on our June tax payments. Valuation allowance, this is an accounting adjustment that's increasing by $10 million, so that's a 400% increase. And that's just to account for the tax that we don't think that we're going to receive, either through future tax sales related to COVID. Capital from operating, we have already reduced capital from operating by 55% or $25 million. And that's what some of the work was on the capital reduction sheets, where we've converted that we've either deferred the projects due to capacity issues in industry or our ability to deliver. A few other adjustments that I can go into detail if you like at $3.5 million. The one that I do want to draw to your attention, because I know council will be interested in it, is a reduction to museum grants, the Barrington Street Heritage grant, as well as community grants. So museums, the museum grant is a reduction of $110,000 or 50%. Community grants we're proposing to be reduced from $500,000 to $350,000, so a reduction of $150,000. And heritage grants are being suggested to reduce by $245,000 or reduced in half. We've assumed that the museums won't open until October, and community groups, by and large, those grants are for capital or for other events that they want to put on. So we're assuming that with COVID that the work will slow down. So that's the reason for the reduction there. And then the heritage grants, that's based on actuals. We always tend to have more money in the pot, if you will, than is actually accessed. So those are the reductions there. So that's the finance, asset management, and fiscal services budget. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I don't see any questions. I'm sure some will come. I have a couple of questions, if I could. A number of these items will be included in Councillor Mason's motion, which will come back next week.
Correct.
So into those. I have a quick question on the short-term loan repayment. If we were able to get 5 or 7 years, how much of a difference, can you give us a sense of how much of a difference that would make this year?
So the principal, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, so the principal payment would be spread over either the 5 or 7 years. So if it's 188 over the, you would think I'd be quicker on the math than this, wouldn't you? So if it's over 5 years, the principal payment would be 37.6 million with interest at 1.1%. So that would be quite low. Obviously, over 7 is 26.8. The interest payment would be a bit higher because you're amortizing it longer. That assumes $188 million. We'll be looking at, we're tracking the tax payments on a daily basis, and we'll have a better understanding of what we need for cash flow purposes at the end of this month.
Councillor Russell?
Thank you. You touched on a whole bunch of the points that I was looking at, and I really appreciate that. One of the items that I didn't hear, and I might have missed it, was the RCMP contingency. I'm just wondering what that is. This is under Fiscal Services.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in Fiscal Services, it's about $463,000. In Fiscal Services, we used to keep money in the budget so that if the RCMP came and asked for funding outside of either the contract, we would have money available, or because quite often we don't have the full cost of RCMP services when we do Halifax Police's budget. So we would keep a little bit in behind there. We haven't been using it, so it was recommended that we reduce Fiscal Services by that amount.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm looking at the capital budget, and there are 3 items under the capital budget that are not slated for reduction. Actually, sorry, 2 of them are not, 1 of them is. And they are the new transit technology, the parking technology, and the public Wi-Fi. And these are under business systems near the bottom. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to each of those. First of all, I believe they're under your responsibility or ICT, and would appreciate it if you could confirm that. And then secondly, speak to each of those 3.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. So they are technology projects. We would obviously work very closely with the business. So I can speak to the transit technology, the status of it, and the parking technology, and how that integrates with other work that we're doing with ICT. From a business point of view, it's probably better if Dave or Brad answers those questions. So both of those projects are in flight. The parking technology project is moving forward quite well. So the budget that we have, we are confident that we can move that forward. The challenge with changing some of those contracts, if we adjust expectations under the contracts, and there's the possibility that we're going to end up with penalties from the vendor or the supplier. So that project is moving quite well. The benefit of that project is that it really ties in quite nicely, as does the Transit Technology Project, quite nicely with some of Council's aspirations for putting more services online. So it really ties in with the digital strategy and being able to offer better services. We are seeing, obviously, with COVID, that it is really important that we have other means for people to access our services. So that's the reason why parking technology was not recommended to be reduced. It's in a good shape. It's moving along quite well. Ties in with other strategies. The new transit technology, there's a number of projects going on under there. It's the same thing. These projects are in flight. They're actively being worked on. Consultants are hired. If they are slowed down or change, there's penalties. The other thing that's always really important is that there is a risk that you lose your consultant group, that they go off and work on other jobs or other projects. And what that does is it takes you longer to gain the time back. So it really isn't a saving. That project is moving along quite well, and also ties in nicely with service delivery, some of the changes that we're seeing from customer service. So that's the reason for that one. And certainly on the business side, Dave could speak to that much more eloquently than I. And then on public Wi-Fi, we are reducing that by $266,000, recommending it be reduced by $266,000. That leaves about $150,000 to install free Wi-Fi in 3 locations. I think Portland, and they're at 3 of the transit terminals is where we're suggesting that. So that's the reason for the change there.
Okay. With respect to COVID-19 and there being contactless payments and things like that, would that be supported by the parking technology and the new transit technology? Would it would basically remove the necessity for people to be in touch with each other as directly as they are now?
Yes, it would, Councillor. I mean, with the parking technology, it's using your cards, PIN pads. We are exploring contactless touch. It's hard to say there as well. And then with the new transit technology, fare technology, all those sorts of things. And as well, there's scheduling involved in there, which makes it more efficient for transit to be able to do the rostering and their scheduling to move people forward. So there are some efficiencies for the operations and for business there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for Jane? I see no other names on the list, Jane. I know we'll be seeing you throughout the process and look forward to seeing you when we discuss capital and get back to general discussion. So I'm just wondering, can you give us a sense when Councillor Mason's motion might come back?
We're scheduling it for August the 20th, sorry, for May the 26th.
Councillor Mason's motion?
Yes.
Next week?
Yeah, a week from today.
Thank you. Okay, Jane, thank you. If nobody else has any questions, we move to legal. That would be John Traves, who turned 36 years old today. Let's have a big round of applause for the birthday boy.
Thank you, Mayor. And councilors.
That might be a little liable, isn't it?
So thank you, Mayor. John Traves, Director of Legal and Legislative Services. Based on our targets, we are proposing a reduction in legal services, Office of the Municipal Clerk, and risk and insurance budgets of around 14%, which is about just shy of $840,000. You will recall from our previous discussions on the budget that this budget's made up of over 90% compensation and then other expenses that we don't really control, which are items like litigation disbursements, costs of outside prosecutors for night court, which are mostly dealing with Motor Vehicle Act, Liquor Control Act matters. And then there's the expenses of supporting regional council, card services, closed captioning, technology expenses, just to name a few, give you a sense of what's there. So you will recall then that from the BOW list, we had an additional lawyer, 2 support staffs in legal, and a legislative assistant in the clerk's office. We are proposing to put those on hold this year and to maintain those vacant. The challenge, of course, is particularly on the legislative assistant, that this assumes that a number of the committees and advisory committees are not fully operational for the balance of the year. So that will kind of work along those lines. We have 1 lawyer seconded to the province presently. We are proposing not backfilling this position for the remainder of the fiscal year. And then we have some wage correction models, just shy or just over 90,000. We have 2 additional vacancies currently in support staff, which will remain vacant for at least 6 months out of this year for another savings of $50,000. And then some overtime savings projected of around $3,000. The bulk of the vacancy management savings that we are proposing are in legal services rather than the clerk's office. Legal services was already understaffed, and while we think we can delay filling some of these vacancies, we recognize this may have some challenges for some of the business units looking for legal services, but we will make it work. In addition to the vacancy management, there was a comprehensive review all the cost centers in my budget. We looked at the last 5 years. We assume no out of town travel like other business units, and obviously a corresponding reduction in the training and conference budgets, basically wiped them out, which was a further potential reduction of $93,600. And we decreased the outside legal fees budget by $75,000. We do have some recoverables coming in from insurance with respect to some of that ongoing litigation, which will increase our revenues a bit by an estimated $42,000. But that's directly related to increased staff time that's going into that file as opposed to being available for anything else. And so that is my budget proposal. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Johnny, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Traves? Seeing no questions, John, you can go, but don't go. We need you for other stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
We will go to CAO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, councilors. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about the budget reductions that we came up with. Certainly want to thank Sally Christie and my senior advisor, and Kim Carver, and Melody Campbell, and Paul Johnson, and of course our financial analyst with finance, who's Lisa Martin, who did a great job working together with me to come up with this restated budget. I'll refer you to the memo that we sent out. Initially, finance proposed a budget target reduction of $894,100, and we actually made that target shy of by about $12,400. And after that, we decided to put back in the $75,000 that we needed for the Halifax Partnership Economic Renewal Plan. And because we recognized we needed to get that funding in place to allow that work to happen. We also put back in $100,000 for the bids. It's clearly, the bids are going to be part of our economic recovery plan. We had originally had a $200,000 budget for that as usual, and we had to meet the target. We had reduced it by $100,000. So we put that back in. So that's in, and we also revisited the 2% increase to the Halifax Partnership. We initially cut it out to make the target, But we put that back in. So that's why you see a difference between the 894,100 and the 669,700. So Jane and I worked on those items, and we felt it was important, both Jane and I, to put those back in. So the target was actually reduced somewhat. And that target was met primarily through a variety of categories, including vacancy management, about 150,000, local travel and parking by 40,000, advertising and promotion by 58,000, conference and out of town travel by 113,000. And I would also point out, Mr. Mayor, that we also had training and conference budgets reduced by out of town travel and training and conference reductions to the tune of about $153,000. And when I speak about my budget, or the CA office budget, that is actually comprised of more than my office. It actually includes the council support office, the mayor's office, government relations and external affairs, and the public safety advisor, who's the advisor to the CAO in relation to public safety. That actually is within GRIA now. So all of those offices come together to form the CAO, so-called CAO business unit. So we met the target, revised target that is, and I'm certainly happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacques. Questions for Jacques? Councillor Whitman.
Thank you, Mayor Savage. Question for Jacques. Thank you, Jacques, for your presentation. What impact did the change in your staffing of your organization with the executive in and out in this last fiscal year have on the budget?
Well, certainly it created a couple of vacancies, one vacancy. I eliminated that position entirely, so it's not in the budget. What it did do in terms of that change, it did create a vacancy at the administrative support level. So we re-engineered, I guess, our office and our report center office to create a combined position, which is basically my AA plus support to the report center. And the previous AA that was with the corporate executive director of corporate was reassigned, redeployed to government relations and external affairs. And Paul Johnston was a successful candidate in relation to the director or managing director of government relations and external affairs, and his position was not refilled and has been put on the vacancy list for this fiscal year. We will try to fill that position in next year or the year after, but for now it's a vacancy and has been accounted for as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jacques, did you say you're going to fill that position? You're going ahead with that position?
Which position, sorry, Councilman?
The executive.
No, that position has been eliminated from the organization at this time. We have no intention of filling it in the foreseeable months or even next year. We'll revisit it in a year or two, maybe.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you, Jacques and colleagues. That is our agenda. We got through a lot today. I don't think, Jacques, we have anybody else that we can bring forward?
No, Mr. Mayor. I think we're done for today. We'll have a lineup tomorrow, ring camera, and then we have the library and police and fire tomorrow.
So maybe somebody can just go through the agenda of the rest of the week. Tomorrow morning we'll be in camera beginning at 10 o'clock. Assuming we're finished at 1 o'clock, we will Zoom in public to discuss the library, the police, and fire.
Yes.
That will continue until we've done. We have a meeting on what time's the meeting? Thursday, Cheryl or Laura or somebody?
Thursday afternoon, Mr. Mayor, we're on Capitol.
Thursday afternoon, hopefully on Capitol. We've got Friday scheduled as well.
Friday afternoon on Capitol as well.
Looking at further discussion, including Councilor Mason's report coming back. Anybody else?
Mayor Savage, the Thursday appointment is in my calendar for 9:30 a.m.
So Mr. Mayor, it's Laura. The Thursday meeting is at 9:30.
Thank you.
9:30 till,
It's in my calendar till noon, Mr. Mayor.
That's
Okay.
correct.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was wrong. I thought it was in the afternoon, sorry.
right, no, I see it there now. And so tomorrow we begin at 10, we'll go to 12, and then we'll go from 1 to 4. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you all. It's good afternoon's work. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the morning. Thanks all. Get off that bridge, Tony.